G'day.
Well, that's quite the Australian welcome. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's a delight to be here with you today, and let's get right into it. So it would probably be an understatement, Sam, to say that the last 8 months or so were incredible for you and quite extraordinary. I would love to understand the 15-year-old version of you. What do you think teenage Sam would have made of the last 8 months or so of your life?
Good question. I mean, like, getting to work on technology was definitely what the 15-year-old Sam would have wanted to be doing. The sort of, like, diplomat part of it, probably more confused and less excited about. But honestly, that's not, like, most of the time is still really just trying to, like, figure out the technical challenges. And I think, like, the 15-year-old version of me could not have imagined that this would have actually happened, but would have been so excited. I think this is, like, the coolest, most interesting technical challenge I could have imagined.
Awesome, thank you. And a similarly unique situation has been your last 5 weeks. So I hear you've visited 20 cities across 5 continents. I'm not sure if that is the right number, but something like it?
Way more. I think 22 countries and maybe 28 cities, 6 continents.
In 5 weeks. That's quite a feat of human stamina, actually.
There have been moments that it's like that I've been like very tired, but on the whole, like the logistics have worked okay.
Okay. Wow.
I'm ready to get home for sure, but it's been like a very special experience to get to talk to so many people building on OpenAI, ChatGPT users, and really kind of like hear the stories and also how things are similar in some contexts, very different in others, what people want out of the technology, what people don't want. It's been like a super special experience.
And from speaking to those user groups, developers and heads of state across all of those different countries and cities, what are your learnings from the tour? And especially, I'd love to understand, is there anything that you're learning that will change what you're doing at OpenAI going forward?
A lot. Yesterday on the flight here, I started typing up, because I took all my notes by hand, and I started typing them into my computer. And it's like very exciting about all of the new ideas, but just like the mountain of work in front of us to go do to make the API and ChatGPT better is a little bit daunting. But there were some things that I kind of knew about ahead of time. Like I knew that people were unhappy with the speed and latency and that we needed to get that better. But there were a lot of use cases that I hadn't thought about at all, where people were like, hey, it just doesn't work for this, or I need this other feature. Or like I knew it performed worse in languages other than English, but when I was in Japan, someone was like, hey, it's hello is 1 token in English, konnichiwa is 7 tokens in Japanese. Like really sticks to me. It's like, all right, I'm really sorry. We got to figure out a way to go improve that. That's not fair.
That's fascinating. And another question to follow on from that would be, there's a lot happening at the moment in the space of regulation. And of course, I know that you've been very vocal in calling for coordinated governance effort of superintelligence. And just in the last 2 days, we've seen the European Parliament take some first steps towards passing the EU AI Act. And right here in Australia, we began a process of an 8-week consultation just in June. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts around how regulation is practical now that those steps have been taken? And is your thinking around regulation, is that evolving at all?
I have been surprised in 2 ways on the trip about the regulatory conversations. Number one, there's an extreme amount of excitement and optimism about what the technology is going to do. The economic possibilities, the social possibilities, the way that this is going to improve people's lives, and it already is. You know, like, a lot of heads of state are like, I use ChatGPT every day for this and that and that, I'm making my government use it, and we're going to go like do this in our education world, and we're doing this here. And there's a lot of excitement and a desire to make sure that we don't slow that down or put regulation in place that slows new startups down or open source projects or just the tremendous economic benefits. And then also, there's much more acknowledgement than I was expecting about superintelligence being something that we have to take seriously potentially in the short term, and the risks that could come with it. So we've had a lot of conversations around the world about what an international agency, for lack of a better word, would look like for governance of superintelligence. How we would have a licensing framework, how we would have tests during training, post-training, before we deploy it, to make sure that no one is accidentally going to do something really bad. And on both of those cases, there's been a tremendous amount of alignment in all of these very different countries.
So let's stay on the possibilities for a bit. You mentioned that even heads of state are quite excited, and I'd be very curious about your perspective on some of the Australian challenges that we're facing. So as you're closing out your tour in Melbourne, there's a couple of things that Australians are currently worried about or challenged by, and the first of them is our innovation performance as a country. And the Startup Network, who are hosting us this afternoon, are trying to solve for some of the challenges, but there are many. And just to give you a flavor, earlier this year, the Productivity Commission released a report saying that 98% of Australian businesses do not release new-to-the-world innovations. The report called Australian business adopters, and incremental improvers. You've obviously got a lot of experience in creating innovation ecosystems. How do you think we should tackle that as a country?
I think one of the exciting things about this AI revolution that has just started is it is a full reset for everyone. Everybody gets to start over. Like we're all at the starting gun, and everything is just going to be very different now. And so I think people, countries, areas, whatever, who missed the last sort of innovation boom, everybody is now at the same place, and it's a reset for all of us. And that's an exciting time. And I think this is probably maybe the best time to start a startup ever. It's at least the best time to start a startup since the internet. I think this is going to be bigger than mobile and on the order of the internet, maybe bigger than that, we'll see. But for new companies or existing companies that really want to innovate, all the rules just changed, and this is when people can do tremendous innovation. So I would say don't worry about the past, look forward, embrace this, and the innovation potential in front of us globally is quite exciting. And it really is way more, I knew it was happening super globally, but it's been, the visceral feel of that on this trip has been very cool.
I love the challenge that you're essentially throwing to us here in this country. Just embrace it, just go with it, don't think about the past.
To be clear, Australia has plenty of great technology startups,
Yeah.
I don't.
And there are many of them in the room today.
Many in this room, so I would somewhat push back on the premise, but I would also say there's an opportunity now for a lot more.
Awesome. Specifically then, in the world of Australia's contribution to AI, where do you think, so given our talent, given our geography, given our trade dynamics, where do you think we could make a contribution to the AI revolution?
I think it's all going to come down to who embraces the new technology the fastest and the deepest. It's the whole world wants this technology, the whole world needs the benefits of this, and it's I think saying well, what ways are Australians or Australia different than the rest of the world is somewhat the wrong question, and it's what can we go do for the whole world? Before OpenAI, I used to run this early stage investing firm called Y Combinator, and one of the things I would notice is startups around the world that were not in the US would say, well, we're going to do this regional version, we're going to do this, you'll do it for the world and we'll do one for our region or this context. And what I would always say is why don't you all just do the whole thing, do the thing for the whole world? And I think that's really important. Many startups have now gone on to do that, but rather than say what can we do unique to Australia, I would just say what can we go do better than anybody else in the world?
Okay. So again, I think you're encouraging us to think a bit bigger.
Sure, why not? That's always more fun.
Yeah, great. So let's talk about another challenge that we're grappling with at the moment, which is productivity. I don't know if this has come up on your trip so far, and I know you've only really touched on in Australia in the last day. But over the last 60 years or so, productivity growth has over the last decade, productivity growth has slowed to its lowest rate in 60 years. And I know that there'll be, in addition to the startup community, many business leaders in the room today who are quite concerned about how do we tackle the productivity challenge?
Look, I think AI is coming just in time. This is not just an Australian phenomenon. This is happening globally. It's happening really badly in the US. Like, we've had more than one decade of just totally lost productivity gains. Like, it kind of, in some ways, doesn't make sense, but if you kind of like try to understand all the pieces, then it does. The productivity growth that we are already getting from AI is astronomical. One of the areas that I think we're most familiar with is computer programmers, just because Copilot was out much earlier than other technologies. But you know, you talk to computer programmers, they'll say, I'm 2 times, 3 times more productive, sometimes more. That'll go up to 20 or 30 times more productive. And when you have a 20 or 30x productivity gain, it becomes a qualitative change in what someone can do. When someone has not just the ability to program 20 or 30 times more productively, but do all the other aspects of their job, it kind of gets like everybody is running their own medium-sized company, can really output a lot of things. So I think one of the most exciting parts of this technology, and part of why people want it so much, is the productivity growth that we can all already see happening.
And you talked about how everybody can be more productive and almost you're not a one-person operation, but really you're sort of expanding yourself in a way. What about the leaders in the room today who are thinking about how do I transition my workforce? How do I encourage learning, reskilling, upskilling, and at scale? How do I do that in a practical way?
The thing that we've seen work the best is companies that just say, we're going to have everybody start using ChatGPT, everybody start building on the API. We don't know what's going to make sense, we don't know what's not going to make sense, but we're going to have like a very high rate of experimentation. And as the models get better and the capabilities go up, we're going to keep trying things that didn't work before. And you know, there are a handful of companies that really have like worked closely with us and gone all in on saying we're going to like use AI for everything. And they report incredible results. It may take a few weeks to like figure out exactly what workflows are going to change and how you're going to think about what people are allowed to use it for or not. But like leaning all the way in and just saying we're going to try this for everything and see where it works, that seems to be the best approach.
Okay. And in this version of future events, if we're all more productive, we're all wealthier, ideally, healthier, more educated, to me, a potential downside sounds like you're removing friction from life. And we need friction, we need challenge, we need adversity as humans in order to create meaning.
We'll find it.
We'll find it?
We're not going to run out.
Sam, personally, where will you find meaning? What's your source of meaning in the future?
I think we never run out of problems. I think every problem we solve is a greater and greater triumph and leads to greater and greater and more interesting problems. So I've never believed this thing like we're going to build AGI and then we're all going to sit around and play video games. Some of us will, and that's totally fine. Like if that's what you want to do, I think you should be allowed to do that, and society should like make that happen for you. But most people want to go like, as you said, I don't know if it's like experience adversity, but at least experience challenge. And I think the problems, as we have better tools and as we have more interesting problems, the capabilities of us will increase, but the expectations will increase as much, or maybe even more. And I'm excited to go see where all that goes.
Yeah, there's a lot of promise. Do you ever think about what it means, not just for you personally as a human, but if you think about the definition of a human being, or us as a species for that matter, and the definition of us is we are defined by our broad-based intelligence. If and when superintelligence becomes a thing, how will you change our definition of this species?
I think it's true that intelligence is what differentiated us from all other animals, but it's a particular kind of intelligence. Like, animals have great intelligence in certain kind of ways. We have very sophisticated language. That's one difference. We have the ability to sort of do very complex social coordination. That's another difference. And there's many other things as well, but I think it's not as simple as saying, we have this system now that can compute really well, and therefore humans have no role. I think we'll have this tool that'll do a lot of the things that we do now or did in the past, and we will go on to do and care about new things. And there's versions of this that have been happening for a long time. If you think about the previous technological revolutions, we used to spend a lot of our time like hunting and gathering, and probably defined ourselves by our ability to like outsmart, certainly to outrun over long distances animals, and then we didn't have to do that as much. And then we, had new things that we defined our time as doing. And then the Industrial Revolution came along, and that changed stuff again quite dramatically. The computer revolution came along, that changed it quite dramatically. I do somehow feel that this one will be bigger than others, but that's probably all of us just feeling that, our moment is particularly special.
Yeah.
Or maybe it really will be different. Like, history, thousands of years from now, we'll have to judge that.
Who knows? Maybe humans are not all that special. I'm told we're almost running out of time, but I'd love to understand from, as you're wrapping up the tour, there's a bit of a microphone issue.
Okay.
5 weeks, many sessions like this one, many user groups, developers, leaders. What do you wish, Sam, you'd been asked on this tour but haven't?
Honestly, the questions I was worried the questions were going to be like very like boring and sort of like, whatever, but you know what I mean by that. They haven't. They have not been. These questions have been great. All of the questions have been great. It's been like a real pleasure to get to talk to people. I guess like one thing that I'm always happy to talk about more that naturally does not get asked as much as the downside is like, what does the real upside scenario look like? What does it really mean if we have intelligence that is too cheap to meter? If we can all have everything we want? Not only that, if we can have things that we can't even imagine today. So it's not even like, we solve climate change and like every disease is cured. That's all great, but that's boring and it's obvious and predictable and it's certainly going to happen. Like, what's the really great stuff 30 years, 50 years, 100 years into the future?
Sam, thank you for thoroughly challenging us and provoking our imagination this afternoon. I'm now going to hand back over to Vicky, who's the CEO of the Startup Network. So Vicky will lead the next segment and then the audience Q&A. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Amazing. Thanks, Nora. Thanks. Hi, how are you? Okay, so we purposefully created quite a big Q&A for you today. But before that, we know that there's a little bit of, can be, a bit of friendly competition between Australians and Americans from time to time. So we thought for fun, well, I'm English, okay? So I'm used to losing, right? So I'm like not part of this at all. But I know you guys love to win. So we thought, for a bit of fun, we might do a bit of competition.
Okay.
Are you up for that?
Let's do it.
All right, awesome, okay.
I have no idea what's about to happen, but
I know.
let's do it.
That's why it's exciting, right? So, Sam, we also heard on the grapevine that you like cars.
I do.
And Australians love cars, is that right? Yeah, the Aussies love their cars, let me tell you. Some hoons out there. In the audience too, I imagine. So we've got Sam's classic car quiz.
I don't know as much about classic cars, but let's try it. Let's try it.
Okay, let's go. We're going to do this. All right, so you've been to a number of countries. And so what we've done is select a couple of cars from different countries you've been to. We'd like to know if you recognize the car and the country that car is from. Are you ready?
I'm not going to do well, but let's go ahead.
Okay, number one.
That's a Porsche from Germany.
Yeah, well done. Do you know which kind of Porsche?
Some kind of 911.
Oh, yeah. Carrera. And sorry, I was meant to ask the audience. Audience? Okay, I think that's 1 point to Sam, right? Yeah. 1 point to Sam. All right, yeah. Porsche. It's pretty beautiful. Do you have one of those?
I do, yeah.
Of course. Next car. Can you recognize the location?
It looks like an English car.
Yes, good job. You're pretty good. And any idea of the kind of car?
Not really.
No. Anybody in the audience? Oh my God, yes. 1 point to the audience. A Triumph Spitfire. Good job, audience. Ooh, it's getting tense. I can feel it on the audience. Next car. Do you recognize this car? Oh, there's a lot of murmuring in the crowd. I think there's a bit of debating about what this one might be.
I don't.
Oh, anybody? Yeah. Anyone know which kind of Citroen? Yes. Oh my God, the audience have got this. It's pretty good, huh? Yes, the Citroen D. I don't know if that's correct. I just made that up. It's a pretty ugly car.
You call that a ute, right?
Yeah! Great job. Yeah, that is a ute. I'm just going to put it to the audience. There is another name for this car. Is anybody? A pickup, yeah?
We wouldn't call that a pickup truck.
No, don't call it a pickup truck. We call it a ute. There's a version of this car that's got a bigger back, a bigger boot. I believe the Australians call it something.
I've heard of that.
That was amazing. Great job. Thank you so much. Okay, who won? Who won? I reckon it was a draw.
I'll call it a draw.
I reckon we'll call it a draw? Oh, no. Will we call it a draw? Yeah, okay, great. Thank you for that. Sorry.
Thank you.
All right, so now we're going to get to the audience. Finally, it's your turn. We have a few people that we already selected. We had over 100 questions coming in from the audience, so thank you so much for all of the questions you put in. We've got 8. We've got 40 minutes. I reckon we could get through 8 that we've selected.
Easy.
Yeah, easy peasy. So first one up, we've got the microphone set up here and also over to the sides, but if we can come to the spotlighted area at the front, that's what you get when you come to a technology-savvy place. Mike Kelly, first of all, please. Oh, Mike, you're sitting right here. Oh, we'd like a round of applause, an audience member.
It's working? Yeah.
Yeah.
Pick it up then. So, Sam, first, I just wanted to thank you on behalf of the audience for coming to Melbourne. It's amazing. It's good to see you
Happy
in
to be here.
Australia. And also, I wanted to thank you because you really, unlike a lot of leaders, take on a lot of questions about the morals and the ethical kind of facets of what you do. And I think that's quite rare, and it's really it's kind of courageous in a way. You kind of really front up for having these kind of difficult conversations. And so I'm curious to ask a question in light of the recent cap raise that you did for WorldCoin. Just for anyone that hasn't heard about WorldCoin, it's a project looking to create the world's identity and financial network as a public utility. As my understanding goes, it's not going to be a public utility to start with, and it won't be for a certain period of time, and investors will need a return. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I was just curious, kind of got 2 questions in the same light. How do you feel being the person that is driving forward the world's most advanced AI tech at the same time as the world's biggest identity and kind of economic network? And how do you manage the risks of yourself and a small group of people having so much power and influence over structures that are so important for humanity?
Yeah. Great question.
I think I'm a big believer. I think this is like a Charlie Munger quote, but he probably stole it from somebody else. But this idea that incentives are superpowers. And if you can just design the incentives right, you can limit a lot of the normal challenges you face, and you can get a lot of the behavior you want. So I don't think the whole just trust us thing works. I think we have to design structures given the sort of nature of what we're facing. So with OpenAI, we started as a nonprofit. We then realized that given how important scaling was and the level of capital we were going to need, there was no way to do it as a nonprofit. We sort of had to figure out how to harness the power of capitalism, but we wanted to do it in a way that didn't compromise our mission. So we came up with this idea of a cap where people could earn like a fixed return, like a certain multiple. But if we did like actually make this super powerful thing and it was generating like trillions or tens of trillions of dollars or whatever, but more than that, like really important power, there was this nonprofit structure that would retain control and be able to do things. And the incentives that puts on us to not worry about making unlimited profit, but know everybody at the company and our investors are going to do great. And then beyond that, we can just sort of like act for whatever at the time seems like it'll be best for the world. I think that's like very important. I think if you look at some of the previous tech companies, the people there were like great people, or at least most of them were, but they had this like incentive system that was like urging them to just push this number up and to the right. And you don't, in the heat of any moment, you kind of can like make a little decision and then another one and another one and another one. And so we just try to get the structure really right. And, you know, I don't have like super voting. I can like, the board can kind of like anytime decide I'm not doing a good job, have a different CEO. I think that's actually quite important. Eventually, we want to figure out a way that we decentralize that to like the world as a whole, but that's much easier said than done. That'll be like another novel structure for us to figure out. But I think like the world as a whole, however that gets implemented, does somehow deserve governance of superintelligence, even access to it, like sharing of the benefits, but more importantly than that, like, you know, maybe access to this system is like the most important wealth resource on earth, and you got to like divide that up equally among people or fairly among people somehow. So building a structure for that, I think, is the way to do it, not saying like, here is exactly how I'll make every decision forever.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Great job. Thank you. And great question, Mike. Thank you. Next person we have up is Felicia Coco. Do we have her close to the mic? Yes. Squeeze through. Everyone let her out, please.
Hey, Sam. Sorry that you had to go to camp earlier. Apologies on behalf of all of Melbourne.
Not at all.
So I guess what you said earlier about the it being the best time to start a startup since the internet.
At least.
Well, that really resonated with me because it kind of felt reminiscent to when ChatGPT launched. So I guess, particularly since the launch of ChatGPT, OpenAI has really inspired a wave of different AI startups that are cropping up. And many of them are building off your API. So it almost feels a little bit like every company's coming out and saying they're an AI company. So I'm curious, which AI startups do you think are going to be the most successful and why?
So with any boom like this, with any startup boom like this, there's two things going on. There are the people who see this and say, this is going to be transformative. I can do this thing that like I've always been wanting to do that I'm so excited about, and I like really kind of like love this, and I'm going to like go dedicate my energy to it. And I think, I can mention some of the categories I'm most excited about. Education is very high on the list. But maybe for me personally, the thing I'm most excited about is using this technology to increase the rate of scientific progress. I am a huge believer that the only sustainable way that our lives all get better is scientific and technological progress. And we need more of that in the world. And if we can get more by building better tools, which I think we can, this is an exciting time for that. And I could name like a whole bunch of other categories too, but it's not going to be about what I or any other one person thinks. It is the creative energy of the world when you give them a new tool that always astonishes you. And that's what's been so fun about this trip, is just the breadth of what people are doing. And I don't know what's going to work. Like, I have my guesses, you have your guesses. Like, all of us together voting as a market will decide. But the energy there is cool. There's another thing going on, which is there were people that a year and a half ago were all in on crypto that have all pivoted to AI, and 2 years from now will pivot to something else. And those like tourists, I'm like less excited about.
Yeah. Oh, we good? We're good. Okay, that was a great question. I love that you touched on education. I also think it's going to be a revolution for education.
Totally transformative. I think, the studies that I've seen in the US are that the difference between classroom education and one-on-one tutoring is like 2 standard deviations.
Yeah.
Unbelievable difference.
Yeah.
But, most people just can't afford one-on-one tutoring. And also, we can probably have a better one-on-one tutor in some ways than we can with any, any one human right now.
Absolutely.
And so if we can combine one-on-one tutoring for every child with the things that only a human teacher can provide, the sort of the support and the excitement, everything else, I think that combination, it's just going to be incredible for education.
Yeah. And I also, sorry, we will get back to the audience questions. I'm just quite passionate about this subject as well. I think for neurodivergent kids too, it's going to have a big impact, isn't it?
We've really seen that, yeah.
Yeah. I think that, I'm really excited by the opportunity that ChatGPT or any AI can bring into the classroom to help level the playing field. And that's what I see this as an opportunity, which is great. Okay, the next person we've got a question from is Rebecca Johnson. Rebecca, are you close to a mic? Yes, you are.
Hello.
Amazing.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So hi, I'm Beck Johnson. I'm finishing a PhD in the ethics of Gen AI. And you gave me access to GPT-3 in 2020, so thank you very much for that.
Of course.
So that was great, and that enabled me to run some experiments in how the model might alter the values embedded in text when I asked it to summarize it, which was really important. And I'm really appreciative that you have OpenAI's framework, and I think that's a fantastic initiative. But knowing that aligning these models to different use cases is so important, I was wondering if you might consider expanding that service to non-tech communities around the world so that they could better evaluate and fine-tune the models for their own use cases.
Yeah, we're working on what a version of all of that looks like for less technical people. What we really want is to get to a world where you can sort of say, like, here's the behavior I want. I'll write out 10 pages of English for you. I'll give you whatever data I have. But I don't really even know what fine-tuning means, and I certainly don't know how to go make a good reward model. Just make me a model that does what I want. And we should be able to get there. So we're working on that. We have, I think, a lot of promising research directions that are beginning to come together. But I think we will have a customization approach for some that'll work kind of abstracted to the user, but that it will let anyone be able to get a customized behavior.
Great news, thank you.
Sure.
Amazing. Thanks so much. That was a great question. Millie Marconi is next. Hi.
So given your experience with Y Combinator, what advice would you give to Australian AI startups seeking global recognition?
The thing that we put on the Y Combinator t-shirts is make something people want. Of all of the advice that YC has to give, that is the one inviolable tenet I believe in. I didn't put it there, to be clear. Paul Graham, who started Y Combinator, did. But it is the only piece of startup advice that I think there are no exceptions to. And that's the advice I would give. Whatever you're thinking, do it a little bit bigger, make something that people want a little bit more, and don't worry about too much else. Any way you solve that problem, if you solve it sufficiently well, you will have all of the global recognition you want. But that's the thing. And I guess the other thing I would say is, I don't know how to phrase this. I was going to say don't do something derivative, but everything is somewhat derivative. It's do something that is very ambitious. Even if it takes many years of being misunderstood. It took OpenAI 4.5 years to launch our first product, which was quite bad. And so I would say it took us 6 years to, maybe more, 6.5 to get to something good. And I think that's totally fine, and there should be more of that, as long as you are making rapid progress internally along the development to something like that.
Amazing. Great answer. Thank you. Next person we have is Anthony Wymond. Did I get that right? Anthony? Yes, great. Hi.
Hi, Sam. Thanks for spending your time with us and for bringing us ChatGPT. So my question is, how did you achieve so much with such a relatively small team compared to much larger tech companies? And what advice would you have for small Australian tech teams looking to solve a huge technical challenge with minimal resources?
I would flip the question and say, how do these companies with very large teams accomplish anything at all?
Yeah.
I think it's like easier to succeed with a small and focused and super talent dense team. I'm a huge believer in, I mean, obviously from the Y Combinator background, but I'm a huge believer in small, focused, super talent dense companies that have a clear mission that everybody believes in. And at a company that is like the scale of like hundreds of thousands of people, that's just hard. They can copy super well. Like ChatGPT, definitely going to get copied now. But we'll already be on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And I think innovation is easier with a relatively small team that has to make a decisive and clear concentrated bet and that doesn't tolerate any mediocre performers. That's it.
Yeah.
So, just to follow on from that then, how did you decide on those people? Like, how did you decide that they were the right fit for the founding team when you were trying to build something that hadn't been done before? Like, did mindset play a bigger part? What did you look for?
I think there's like no one here is like the thing you care about. It's like, here are these like 12 things that are important, and you've got to sort of like look at where people spike across all of them. Like, raw talent is obviously huge, but without the right kind, like without the sort of the right kind of mindset, and maybe even more importantly, without like a shared belief in the right mission and the right approach, like the right, maybe everyone doesn't agree on the same technical approach, but at least how we're going to run the company, how we're going to try to work, where we're trying to go. Even without that, it's bad. But I think the thing that you need for like scientists and founders are all like a little bit different. So I hesitate to like give one answer of just here's what to look for everyone. It certainly gets easier with practice. Like, one of the best things about running YC was getting to meet like about tens of thousands of founders and observe over many years like who did well at what, and also like where weaknesses needed to get supplemented. But I think like you want people who are unbelievable at what they do, and that have a like determination and commitment to the mission, and that are going to contribute to the net output vector of the organization. So there's like a lot of super talented people who bring with them their fair share of challenges, and that's okay unless the challenges like are so extreme that they slow down on net the whole organization.
Amazing. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, amazing.